I didn't even realize my like top of my head was in the frame there. This new camera setup's really messing with me. There you go, everybody. You can see the top of my head. I'm sure there's a bald spot if you look close enough somewhere. I really got to start doing scheduled streams so people actually even know when to come watch. I still got to work out like I need a new camera. That's really what I need. But everything from Logitech is back ordered. So until they get that fixed, there's not much I could. I'm using like a cheap Chinese knockoff camera. And it doesn't have zoom features, and the Logitech webcam I do have, the picture quality is like, I don't know. Not good is the word I'm looking for. If I stream from my phone, like I've done in the past, I get better video quality. But then I can't use OBS. Which means no background music or anything like that you guys can hear. Just absolute silence. And since I normally don't talk to myself in my stream, unless people are asking questions, it'd be a very boring stream. Just to have you guys sit there listening to my dehumidifier. See if we even get anybody in the stream. If we get some people on, I may continue to stream. If no one comes on today, then I'm gonna cut the stream short. And this will just go on Instagram or something. Oof, I threw that line wrong. It's a shame. This ink's getting a little on the thick side. For all this curvy stuff, it's almost worth switching to a multi-liner or something. Like a micron or really anything other than a nib. It's honestly just slowing me down doing that stuff with the nib. There was a little spot of rendering that I had missed that I just saw. Rotated the... Oh, there it is. Yeah. Just lost it again. There it is. Ooh. Losing my mind. All right. I gotta clean this nib. That's part of the issues I'm having. Like the ink's not remotely close to like some of the thicker inks I've used. I just don't like to be fighting my tools. You know, there's a lot to say about the debate of nib inking versus using like microns or something. And if you have to fight your tools, then it's actually probably more productive for you to use the other tool. So whichever that may be, if you're having problems with your ink or your nibs, you might be better off learning how to achieve the same effect with some type of fine liner. Or properly maintaining your tools. Like, most nibs aren't going to give you that many problems if you keep up with, like, the maintenance and stuff. But that's the whole issue, is keeping up with the maintenance and everything. Like, I'm actually going to clean my nib real quick. This is the nib I'm using that's in my gold. This would stay on the table. The nib that I use in my gold holder is typically an older nib that's been broken in, smoother, results in a slightly bolder line. It's not going to be nearly as sharp as far as being a paper shredder. So working bigger black areas is more productive with this nib for that reason. But the thing about older nibs is if you're not careful, they can start to rust on you. But not just that, but just like the amount of ink that accumulates on the nib that's dried, and you know, I do my best in between dipping to wipe my ink, my nib off, but you don't get all of it, and it eventually just builds up and builds up and builds up. And that's normally when I'll soak my nibs in Simply Green or something like that. And right now I'm just using a cloth rag and some Windex to get that a little bit cleaner. Alright, let's see, without watering my ink down, how does this work now? Yeah, it's working good. So yeah, it wasn't really that the ink was too thick, it was just that my nib needed to be cleaned. But again, like, if keeping up with the tools like that isn't your thing, you might be better off with using some type of fine liner. And you can achieve the same effect. Like, what you don't realize is a lot of the rendering that's on this page was actually done with a 0.1 micron. Like, it's far from being all nib. There's some brush on there, but some of the rendering was done with brush, some was done with a nib. But a lot of the rendering was done with a 0.1 micron. But if you're lazy like me, then nib inking can become problematic when you're working a lot, because I've been working a lot lately. So my inkwell stays uncapped all day, every day. And that means my ink condenses. You know, the water starts to evaporate out of it. And that's another thing I have to maintain, is the viscosity of my ink. So I either have to add more ink to it, or add water if it's just way too thick. Sometimes I'll even have to remove ink like a significant portion of ink and add water. Like, you almost go to like a 50-50 mixture because of how thick the ink's got. Because normally I'll just keep adding ink, a couple drops of ink here and there, until that happens. But I try to keep my inkwell relatively full, because you don't want to be like dipping in and guessing where your ink level's at. So it helps to know, like, keep your ink level and your inkwell towards the top. It's either that or put it so far low that, depending on the type of inkwell, that you have to touch the nib to the bottom of the inkwell, and then you have the right amount of ink on the nib. One or the other. I prefer just keeping the inkwell topped off. Seems to work a little bit better for me. Yeah, this ink is a little on the thick side. So what I'm doing is I have a thing of water off to the side. And I just quickly dip the very, very tip of the nib in the water. And that helps dilute the ink just enough to get it flowing good. There's certain inks that I have to do that with, like right out of the bottle. Or it could just be that I've had the inks for such a long time. I don't know. Like I was gonna say, Vortex is one of those inks that I have to do that with. But I bought a new bottle. Or a new jar, rather. And I didn't have to do that with it. So it could just be that I have so much Vortex ink that I use that it's starting to thicken on me. Or it could be consistency issues with the manufacturer's formula. Who knows?
Let's be friends. You only need what's best for you and not them. Don't pretend. Now I don't wanna lose sleep thinking about everything we could be. Let's just
Yeah, what I'm doing is in between, like when I start to run out of ink, I'm actually wiping down the nib and trying to get any dried ink off, any like little bits of paper, anything like that. I'm just trying to get it off my nib. See how thick that ink is. I mean, I'm sure you can actually see it, but I just dipped it. There we go. Like I have to really load up the nib on ink to get it to start flowing. Trying to pick spots to work on right now. I'm just kind of jumping around the page. Yeah, see, and now it's already not flowing again. So dip the very tip in water. There we go.
Silver screens, believing everything we come to see. Go outside, it feels so good. We're loving and hating and making scenes. Now we just see everything we believe.
Ah. I think I'm gonna add a few drops of ink. I'm using Ultra Draw. So I'm just topping off my inkwell right now. Hoping that what it needed was more ink and not more water. What I actually have here, this is my inkwell. It's actually a Winsor & Newton 14 milliliter ink jar that I epoxied inside of an ashtray. And that's just so it's harder to tip over, and if it does tip over or I spill ink, it goes inside the ashtray rather than somewhere else. I just keep like a old, like a toothpick really. Just stir it up. See how that works. See, let's try it on this rendering here. This nib actually, okay, yeah, it's working good. This nib isn't the best one to be rendering with because it doesn't get as sharp of a line. But it is what it is. So like all the rendering right here is all done with a brush. There's a couple other spots it was done with a brush. But honestly, a lot of it, like I know almost all of it in this area, it's all done with a micron. So, I mean, I don't know. I use whatever tool makes my job easier. I don't stick just to nib. I used to. That's a more recent change. I used to stick strictly to nib and brush. But there's been a couple instances where I was having issues with doing some feathering, and I just doing it with the micron was just the more productive way to go on that piece. And ever since then, I've been doing it. And even if I do rendering with a nib or a brush, this doesn't mean I'm not going to go in with like a really small multi-liner or micron and touch things up. That's something I almost always do. One of the most important things when you're inking is to have confident lines, which means you kind of want to nail at least part of your line in one stroke. So like, gotta be careful with all the wet ink down there, but like this line from here to here, I'm gonna kind of do a couple practice strokes, get my ink flowing, and I want to try to nail that. In one sweeping motion like that, because it has a huge impact on your line quality. And it's better to have a good looking line that kind of drifts than a line that's not, it's in the right place but looks bad. Because at least if it looks good and it drifts, it looks like you meant to do it. You just can't drift too much, You may have to go back in and white segments out or, touch stuff up, but that's not bad. But the key is that your lines look confident. And the better looking the line is, the more it looks like any mistakes that you made, they don't really look like mistakes because they look like that was an artistic choice. Right or wrong, it at least looks like you made a decision. It might have been the wrong decision. An artist might go, not quite sure why you put that line there. but it looks like you meant to do it. Anybody ever has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. And you know what? I didn't even realize. Hold on a second. I had this set to. Alright, there we go. Alright, where do I want to work next? There's a lot of like areas in here. Like right here. That I have to touch up the rendering. I gotta kind of close it up a little bit more. There's a ink smudge there. An ink smudge there. These things happen. There's motion at my front door. Alright, it's not letting me see my camera. Just a lawn, guys. Alright, I gotta be careful here. My ink doesn't want to flow, so hold on. Clean off the nib real quick. Yeah, my phone just fell. Sweet. That would be a perfect example of a not confident line. I pet that line. I didn't work on my natural arc of my wrist. I'm gonna have to fix that, but it is what it is. Today's a slow day on the stream. It's a Friday. I'm pretty sure everybody's working. I'm gonna try to stream again tomorrow, but I've got some stuff going on tomorrow, so I don't. We'll have to see. I normally strongly discourage filling black areas with a nib, but That's just because the amount of ink it puts down. It's going to take a really long time to dry, which means you're going to be at a high risk of smudging it. But I'm just trying to stay conscious of that. And be a little more productive. That way I'm not switching tools. Telling you what, these guys walking around out front are really making me upset. Not for anything, it's just annoying me. My phone keeps going off. Ah. Oh my god, this is really... Are they just pacing in front of my front door? Seriously. Yeah, pretty much. Alright. Sweet. Alright, I think I'm gonna switch to a different segment. The nib I really want to be using for this is my newer nib. So I'm gonna switch that out real quick. Clean this nib off. Switch pins real quick. So this has a much newer nib in it. Much sharper nib. It's really gonna work well with my rendering. That's wise because there's a lot of stuff on this section that I haven't rendered. The minute you start to tear up paper, make sure to clean your nib. That's just gonna ruin. Like you may be like, I can get away with it. clean your nib. The last thing you want to do is ruin a line.
This love that you never started, you once destroyed a broken heart that was already shattered. Holding on to what we have to take us to the edge and back. Holding on to what we have to take us to the edge and back. This love that you never started, you once destroyed a broken heart that was already shattered. Holding on to what we have to take us to the edge and back. Holding on to what we have to take us to the edge and back.
There's so much heavy detail in this. I don't know. It's one thing if it's not heavy, like bold detail, but when it's bold detail, then especially with a Hunt 102, I'm probably not going to be able to get it all in one stroke. I'm gonna have to sculpt the line. Just what I'm having to do right now. So, like something like this, I can hit that at one stroke. Some of these smaller lines. And stuff like that. But then I gotta connect it all. This is the part where it's like, yeah, it shouldn't take that long to do that. Yeah, honestly, like this particular portion might be better off using a brush. Just not sold on using a brush today. I see myself making a lot more mistakes today with a brush than with a nib. So, nib it is. Just a lot more work. So basically what I'm having to do, put in holding lines. So I'm basically doing the outside of the solid black shape. Rather than trying to flex the nib. I'm actually like drawing the line. I mean, the exceptions are like thinner stuff that I know I can hit with the pin pressure. That. Thing is though, when you rely on pin pressure with a 102 to a certain extent, that's where you really start to tear up paper. So and then the ink, I tend to keep my ink a little on the thin side. So one of the other downsides to that is if you want angular shapes where the pressure changes, or like where the line weights change, you're going to have to draw it in basically, because the thinner the ink is, the more the surface tension is kind of like spills out of the nib in a way. and it gives it a softer, more fluid look. Which, if that's what you want, it's fine. I do that a lot with like G pens. But you're not going to get that sharp, angular look. Which is something I'm trying to use a little bit more of in this piece. Now with a brush, it's another story. When you have your brush loaded properly, you can definitely get that angular look with the brush. I just work quicker and cleaner with a nib. That's just due to experience. I typically only use brush for rendering, certain types of rendering, or filling in black shapes. Overthrew that line. I'm gonna have to switch pens on this little segment. So the rendering in this spot is a little too fine for that nib. Spraying some more Windex on my rag here and cleaning off my old nib. Alright. See where we're gonna work now. Even these lines look terrible right there. I'm actually gonna white out those lines and redo those. Those look terrible. If not, there we go. So I was talking about line confidence, and one of the things you'll see that I do a lot is I throw my lines rather quick. You will rarely see me, like, you may see me set up for a line, like check the arc of my wrist, make sure it's going to go where I want it to go. But the actual line itself goes quick. And that's because I typically have a trimmer in my hand. So if you have shaky hands, the way to get confident lines is to throw your lines quick, because you won't see the shake. So spend the time to practice the throwing lines at different distances, different arcs and stuff quickly until you get good at it. It's exactly what I had to do. Otherwise, your lines will be super shaky and then they don't look confident. Whole host of issues. You just won't have good looking artwork at that point. So there we go. The ink flow started. sure my head's in the camera view again. Sorry about that. Just trying to work quick here. It's all about making confident lines and confident shapes. It's really what sets an inker apart from a person who draws with ink, if that makes sense. Like, you might be someone who sketches a lot and comes up with some great drawings in graphite. But then when it comes time to use the pen, it almost seems like, man, I should have left that in graphite. And the reason behind it is you can kind of build a line with pencil, especially if you're using a mechanical pencil, in a way that you can't do as easily with a pen. So the difference there is when a person who draws but isn't like quote unquote an inker, there's a difference in the control and the confidence of the line. Unless that person works in ink a lot, like. But it's definitely its own skill set. Even when working with microns, definitely its own skill set. Unless you have really steady hands, there's, you can get away with a little bit more. You have like surgically steady hands, but even then I feel like the lines look a little bit more dead. The lines don't look as exciting. You would really have to spend some time like studying line weights and stuff like that. So basically, the difference between an inker and someone who finishes their drawings in ink is an inker just has better control over the tools because they use them a lot more. Pretty much it. That's what I get, paid to do. So I have a pen in my hand, much more than I have a pencil. It just comes down to practice. You can be a person who draws with ink and not be an inker and get the same quality of line work. You know, just another skill set you got to build. One of the big mistakes or technical flaws I see in people who draw and finish their work in ink is they tend to pet their line a lot. Like, that's how they'll draw their lines, is by petting them. And by petting them, I mean is they'll like do this like a bunch of little lines to create one long line, and it makes it look very sketchy and rough, which, unless that's what you're going for, that's not what you want out of an inked piece. Because an inked piece, you want it to look finished, which means it shouldn't have that rough, sketchy quality to it. It can have an aggressive quality to it by being angular, but having those sketchy headed lines, like I said, unless that's a stylistic thing you're going for, that's where most people make their mistakes. And that's simply from lack of practice and not understanding the mechanics of inking and like the wrist and everything. You know, if I'm doing a long line, I draw the long line off a different joint than what I draw the short line off of. Like, these short lines are coming off my wrist. A longer line is gonna come off my elbow, and if I have to go across the whole page, it comes off my shoulder. You won't see me move my fingers really that much unless I'm doing like some really small curve stuff. It's all movement for my wrist. The only finger that I use, my thumb, and that's the digit that controls how much pressure I put down on the pen nib. Yep, I felt that. Alright, so I set my hand in some ink. I'm gonna have to let that dry and then I'm gonna have to fix it. They just smudge. So dealing with smudges, there's a couple things you can do. The first thing you want to do, if you have an electric eraser, it's really helpful. The first thing you want to do is wait for the ink to kind of dry. If you don't want to wait for it to dry, you're going to take a paper towel got me a paper towel here. And you don't want to smear anything. Like I'm dabbing. You can also take the roll and just roll it across the image. But it looks like this is all dry. So I'm going to take an eraser real quick. Well, let me see if there's any more wet ink anywhere else on the page. I don't see any. I'm going to attempt to lift. Alright. So I attempted to lift any like weak ink. See, and then there we go. Wait for that to dry. And then I'll go back in for a second coat. There we go. All fixed. Like there's some areas you can see like right here, like obviously. Need a secondary coat. Smudges happen, especially with me. I hop around so much on the page to avoid smudging that I end up smudging anyway. The best way to avoid smudging is to use a brush or a micron. But like I said, I really don't want to mess with a brush today. Should I? This brush looks terrible. Look how bad that brush looks. It's actually a really good brush. There we go. I had to fix it. Just twist it in your mouth until the point comes back. Do I want to use a brush? Are we gonna go that route? You know what? Let's go for it. Use a brush I haven't used in a long time. Use an 8408. Size 2. I want to get a size 3 8408. I don't know. I'm not feeling the 8408 today. Just those couple strokes just didn't feel good to me. Doesn't mean anything though.
Standing on the edge of a cliff, realize there must be more to life than this. Reaching for the stars, traveling so far, like a dragonfly. Just grab my hand from hidden sin. Where I need tonight. I run
I think the 8404 might be a better option for this. 8408's a little too fine point. If I was doing more rendering, I might stick with the 8408, but we're gonna go to 8404.
We'll never forget the past. What counts is our brand new start. Even if it hurts me or I get scared, just come take this risk now. We'll be prepared, reaching for the stars, traveling so far,
Yeah, still to this day, this is probably one of my favorite brushes that I've bought. This brush is like 6, 7 years old at this point. I think maybe 6 years old. Still working fantastic. Fantastic brush. The Raphael 8404 size 2. I just got like some other little areas that I gotta fill real quick, and then I'm gonna take a break. Yeah, I messed that up.
a freak show. Look through the peephole, everybody geek, yo. Need a good girl with an extreme need. See 6 midgets that be fighting, juggling. Maybe it's just me, cause my mind is struggling. Babes, boyfriend is acting like a clown. Know what's going down every time that we are down. Take a look through the peephole, yo. Everybody's getting geek, bro. Stop the hate and let them neeks know that we turn the club into a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club, yeah, we turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club into a freak show. Look at Snow White eating rotten apples. Dirty bass that be coming at you. Roller coasters like a supernova. I'm the ringmaster, this my tabernacle. See you screaming, I'm like, what for? Oh, you pop? Yeah, I got popcorn. I haven't wake up on the wrong lawn, so we won't stop. It's a lost cause. Take a look through the peephole. Yo, everybody's getting geek, bro. Stop the hate and let them neeks know that we turn the club into a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club, yeah, we turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club into a freak show.
Thought about this too much. What's there left to say? Throw your stones the river. Like me, it drifts away. I would watch you stare. I would watch you stare. Oh, but there's no one there. We can't figure this out. Put your feet down. We are the lucky ones. Swallow your choices, done. Terrified of what's left remains unsaid until you break my mind. Till you break my mind. Until you break my thought. Till you break my thought. I'm throwing wishes in the world in hopes that you will keep them for yourself. And know that there was a time when we never let go, never let go. Ooh, we never let go. We can't figure this out. Put your feet down. We are the lucky ones.
Well, I think I'm gonna take a break. Hopefully get some more interaction on the next stream. Go clean my brush out. I'll probably finish this up on the next stream. Do it tomorrow or something. Maybe later today. Kind of hungry. Get something to eat. Anyway, guys and gals, I hope you enjoyed today's stream. If you're watching the playback, well, thank you very much for taking the time to play this back. If you're here with me during the stream, well, thanks for joining me. Even though we didn't get to do any chatting today, I always enjoy seeing the viewer count there. As always, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it. If you're watching the replay, leave a comment. Anyway, have a great day. As I slowly walk over and hit end stream.